Okay, one last thing I want to do, and this is going to be, I think this one's going to be kind of fun if it works out. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new drawing. I'm going to call this Cloud 1. Close that. And so the clouds I'm kind of going for maybe something like this, obviously a little darker, like a little bit flat on the bottom, maybe a little bit more like looming feeling clouds, like I don't necessarily want bubbly, and I do want to try to get some shadows in there. We're going to see how that actually works out with what I'm going to try to do first. So I want to show you this, but I need to preface this. This is going to seem like magic, and it's not. This is not going to solve all of your animation problems. This only really works in certain situations. So I've gotten my brush working, and it's kind of a bigger brush. I got like the ability to kind of start kind of small and I'm just going to use this kind of as a blob. I'm going to make like these little blobbies that kind of trickle out, but I want some big spherical shapes in here. Actually, I'm sorry, before I start doing any of that, I need to undo all of that. Let's go ahead and make us a color palette for this, because I want to use a different set of colors that I can change. I'm going to use something a little grayer. Maybe this. Let's just start with something kind of dark. And this is for our shadows, right? Okay, so we can see that, and that's not super easy to see on that background, but so I'm going to start with something a little smaller and like these big shapes. I'm really just sort of working out the mass of it at first. Something like this. And so I'm just looking at some reference here really quick to get an idea. Yeah, I wanted to, this may be feeling a little too blobby. I wanted to have a couple of big blobs, but I don't want it all to feel like a bunch of spheres. And I do want a little bit of this like little trickle out from it. Probably, I'm going to try to keep it together though if I can. To make this just a little smaller, I'm going to zoom in here. Just get this little bit of a trickle going on there. Right? Okay, so really when I go to select this, I want you to recognize this is just a bunch of blobs, right? If I do this, it looks like that. And so I want to morph this all together into one blob. So I'm going to, and actually just for visibility reasons, I'm going to go ahead and change this color. I'm going to change it back later, but change this to a lighter color so you can kind of see it. There we go. And then to make this one blob, just so we can see that better, I'm going to go Drawing, Optimize, and Flatten. That's our Alt-Shift-F. Right? And so that makes it one cloud. Right? So pretty happy with how that looks, especially I think if we turn on our moon, we're going to get some interesting look to that, right? So we'll play around with that here in just a minute. Right now, though, I'm going to go out here, like, beside it. Let's just go back to number 2. Turn on my onion skinning, and I'm going to draw a completely different cloud now. And I'm going to do a giant thing, but I still want it to sort of take up most of the same space, but I do want it to be a different cloud entirely. Right? So let's just try something like this. Right. So let's just try that one. And so you should be able to see now with the onion skin on and off the two different clouds that we're going to get, right? Again, on that second one, ooh, that's not what I wanted. On that second one, I'm going to select all this because it's just a whole bunch of blobs. Drawing, Optimize, Flatten. Now, if we did this like the lightning, like what I would do next is I would go through with onion skinning on, and I would separate these out, right? I would go out here to maybe here, fill into F5 to there. And then I would just start subdividing. Like right here, maybe I would just create a completely new drawing. Oh, not that, I'm sorry. New drawing, a new empty drawing. And then I would, so I got my, there we go. I would go here, create a new empty drawing. So I have my before and my after, and I would just start trying to fill it in, trying to morph in between that, right? Like one drawing at a time. But with something like a cloud, that's really hard and just takes a long time. So instead of doing that, since this is something amorphous, that kind of is a weird change, right? Like it's not necessarily has to be a perfect change. And I don't want to really get into all that tediousness. I'm going to stretch this out to about 40 frames. Go ahead and hit F5 in there. I don't know that I actually have to do the F5 part, but I'm going to anyway. I'm going to select my first frame and that last frame. So I really just have 2 frames where I'm holding this first one for a long time, and then I snap to that one. And I'm going to do both, select all of that, and I'm going to go to animation. I'm going to try morphing. Now, when I create this morph, it is just going to do that. It's just going to morph one into the other. And it's going to do it in whatever way it thinks is right. And with a cloud, since there's no real definitive way of a cloud moving, right, it makes sense, right? Now, if I try to do this with, I'll just show you on a new drawing layer as an example. Let's do this as a little test, right? So let's say I tried doing this with a character's mouth, right? And I went from like, oh, it's way too big. What was that? 149. Let's move this down to like something like this, and I tried to go from this to this, like their mouth, you know, going from the smiley face to like an ooh shape, right? Like this, like this. Now that blending may not work as well, and the reason is because it's still just blending points to points, right? And if I were to go to animation, watch it work and just prove me wrong, create morphing, like it kind of works, but you're getting a lot of weirdness in there, right? But what this may get you is a starting point with stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this entire thing here. Now the other thing I can do here is this is a transition, right? And if I wanted this transition to take longer, I could just drag this out here longer and drag this out here longer. And I think that it'll just recalibrate it. Oh, am I wrong? Apparently I'm wrong. But I do think there's a way I can redo this. I can just delete this transition in here and make it happen longer. But one of the things I think is really kind of nice about it is it's just this slow transition, right? So I'm going to go ahead and try this. And I select all of these keyframes, right click on them, and I think I can do drawings. Oh, it may be under the animation thing. Actually, I'm not 100%. Yeah, convert morphing to drawing. And enter the base name of drawings. We'll call it clouds. And so now what we get is the individual frame by frame animation for each of them. So not each of these are just individual drawings that I could edit, right? And so now, you know, this is just a series of drawings. Okay, last little thing I want to show you with this, and of course I'm going to be able to expand this more, is that now I have this series of drawings here, right? I can, actually I want to show you 2 more things with this. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say copy cells from the timeline, and then right here I'm going to say paste reverse. And so now I have an even longer, we'll call it a cycle, where it goes from one into the other, back into the first one again, right? Which may not necessarily be what I want, but I just wanted to show you that I can make an infinite cycle with this, right? So it's not really that bad. Let's see what that looks like. The only issue I have with it is I can kind of tell the ping pong point. I can tell the point where it kind of reverses. So, you know, maybe I would want this transition happening slower. The other thing is, like, it doesn't mean I'm done, right? I can go ahead and go here, or I can go, let's do it right here, and do another drawing that is completely different. I think I have this at like 150. That is completely different. Is that completely different? I made that a little too much like the original one, didn't I? Maybe a little bit of something like that. I feel like this needs some more trickle dabbles up through here. And then again, I can just take this and drag it way out through here, delete those two, and then from there out to here, I could do animation, morphing, create a morph. And so continue to morph into this, right? And then I could also just go back here to my first frame, and then we're going to copy that cell, and then way out here on the end, I could paste that cell, and just paste the cell, and I can do a morph from that to that. Animation, morphing, create morphing. And so now I do have a cycling object. It goes from here through like two different styles of drawing. So I'm just going to highlight everything here from the very first one to the very last one, drawing. And we're going to go, I'm sorry, animation, morphing, and then we're just going to convert all those to drawings. We'll still do clouds, I guess. And so now I just get this cycling, this drawing cycle, right? And hopefully if I turn off this, I get a bit of something here that we can start to see. So again, may not be perfect. It's a little bit of something. Actually, I bet that one does weird because of these are all blotches, aren't they? It figured it out. So now that I have that, I'm gonna break your brain just a little bit on some stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and bring my cloud and my environment back up, get this into a format that I like. So I have this. I can redraw all of these frames over and over again, but if I decided I wanted this cloud to be moving across the screen, like that's a lot of drawings to go in here and move one at a time, right? To just highlight all of the, go ahead and lock the moon so I don't mess it up. Grab all this and just move it just a little bit. And how do I find it? There we go. Move it just a little bit, and then get this next one and just move it a little bit. Like, and that's not how I even want to do that. Like, I'm going to do this in a different way. But I'm going to show you on a different drawing just to make this make sense, right? If I go to a drawing layer here, close this, I'm just going to draw again, just like another blob, right? So let's say I wanted to move this blob, and it's just a single drawing, just so you can see it a little bit better. I wanted to move this drawing across the screen. There's so many other tools in here we haven't even looked at yet. And so the one I want to look at is this right here. And then across the top, these tools here. So these are the translate tools. So I want to have to differentiate with a couple of things here. One is when I'm using this tool, I'm moving these drawing elements, right? I'm moving this curve to a different spot, right? I highlight this and I just move all of that drawing over, or not all that drawing, all of that blob, all that shape over, right? So These tools here apply to the drawing layer itself. Okay, so if I were to click, and this is another way of accessing some of those, right? But if I click here, you'll see that I have this little pivot point over here. In fact, I think it's the pivot point's over there too if I'm using this tool. But this right here, the pivot point is over here, and I can use that to, I don't want to move the pivot. Oh, sorry, I'm going to turn this off of this view just so you can see this a little bit better. It will move it in real time, right? Or I can use this rotation to rotate it around that pivot point in real time. And I want you to notice that when I do that on my timeline here, if I rotate this, I get a little dot on my timeline. You see that? And then if I go back and do it again, I get another dot, and it connects the two. And so what we're getting is a deformation or a translation or a rotation on the entire drawing, right? I like to think of this as like your cell phone, right? If you're playing an image on your cell phone, an animation on your cell phone, the image looks like it's moving, right? Like maybe a character running across the screen of your cell phone. The character looks like they are moving. With this translate though, that is not the character moving. That is the cell phone moving, right? That is if the character is running in place and I moved the cell phone, right? That's what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and delete this. Now the only problem, before I delete this, the only problem with this is these little dots are right here on top of my drawing, right? And sometimes that can be a little bit difficult to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to instead, I'm going to show you how to do that, because I could do that on this drawing here, right? I could very easily go in here. There's my move tool. I usually use this little center point to move my pivot point, and I can sort of start my translate over here somewhere, right? And then over the period of this animation, I could move this cloud across the sky, right? Now one of the problems with this, and the reason I don't necessarily like doing it this way, is because, you know, if I move it here again, right, I get this other point, and let's say I wanted to move that point. When I click here to move it and drag it, well, if I have to click it the second time to drag it, I'm moving not only the point but also the drawing, and so now I get a weird like click in there with that drawing. And so I don't like doing it this way. I like to kind of keep it separate. You can do it this way, and there's even methods up here where you can isolate that you're just using the keyframes and just using the drawings. But instead, I'm just going to undo all of that, and instead I'm going to create sort of like a parent object or a parent control that allows me to do this without worrying about messing up these keyframes. So if I right click on here, oh, I'm sorry, that's not that. Let's see. I think I can do it here. So yeah, I can just go through here, click here, and do parent peg. So that's Shift P. I did Control P. So if I do, yeah, there we go. So Shift P, or I can select it here, parent peg, right? And while I have this cloud selected, when I do that, it sort of puts a node above it, right? So what that means is I can actually lock my cloud drawing and not worry about messing with that. And when I go to my parent peg, it has its own pivot point too. And so I can move the parent peg, and since the cloud is a child of that, it will move with it, right? Now I want to reiterate, it's not just moving that I can do with this. I can also scale it, right? I can skew it. I can do a lot of interesting things with this. So I'm going to try this as a little test here. I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to kind of move it slowly out of the way to this way to kind of reveal the moon, right? And so what we get now is this slow moving thing revealing the moon. And honestly, like, the more I look at that, the more I'm not crazy about it. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and hold this cloud over and maybe not cover it up as much. I'm actually going to just swap these keyframes. I'm going to do something like this, and then this. Oh, I'm getting the opposite of it, where it's moving over in front of the moon. Right. So again, I could do this whole thing again over on the other side and have a completely new set of this. So let's go ahead and just turn this on and just see what this looks like now. If I hit play, oh, I have to hit this play, render and play. So it's going to do a quick render of it, and we'll get to see what this looks like in front of our why is it not playing it then? Oh, sorry about that. It's playing it behind the scenes here. It exported it out and like made a video for us to see it. I didn't realize that was playing in the background there. Close window. And so we can see it kind of play out over time. So once it gets to the end of it, hopefully it'll just play it through. This is really big. Yeah. Wow. All right. So I'm going to close that. And also realize I didn't even have that on, so we can also kind of watch it this way if I want to. Unref, I can just sort of watch it play back in real time here too. Now again, this is why these color palettes are really nice. Is now looking at this, these clouds are very bright, right? And what I would probably do is go back in here and my cloud color. This is where I can start, sort of playing around with that a little bit, right? I may even do a little bit of lighting effects in here later, but the other thing that's kind of neat of what I could do in this is a sort of a layered animation, right? So I have this whole thing moving together, right? I could very well just do a new drawing in here, and I'll call this cloud highlight. Close. And then on this cloud highlight, I can make a new color that is a little bit lighter, and I can sort of, brush on top of it to get those like cloud shapes, and like we can sort of play around with that. So I mean, I could do something like that to get the highlights on the cloud. I have a couple of other ideas. In all honesty, I may try a different cloud method too with the morph to see if I can get a different result. So yeah, we got some interesting stuff that we can try here. Again, this morphing is only going to work in certain situations, right? And I definitely need more clouds in mine, so I'm going to maybe work on a little bit more of that now. And hopefully this has been helpful. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.